My name is Eliza Voss, and I'm 30. Competence for me isn't flashy, it's choreography. At 12:00 a.m., the dishwasher hums into off-peak like it knows a secret. The thermostat inhales just before dusk. The last cell in my budget glows green, a pulse I can trust. People confuse quiet order with passivity. They don't realize it's a net you string under your life long before anyone else thinks you'll slip. Julian thinks the net is a killjoy. He didn't say that when he came to me with the dream, Elon, a high-end curated consignment boutique for the city's elite. Not thrift, a salon. Silk that remembers Paris. Bags with provenance. The kind of place, he said, where stories come attached to zippers. He's 28 and dazzling in ways that exhaust a room, a brainstorm in human form. I loved that about him once. He sees color, I see margins. It felt like balance. I put up $80,000 of my savings. I didn't hand him a check. I formed an LLC. Alana Pierce, my lawyer, sharp enough to leave paper cuts, drafted the operating agreement. 80% to me for capital, 20% to Julian for sweat equity and curation. I signed the 2-year commercial lease in my name. I opened the business bank account. He would be the face. I would be the ballast. For 6 months, it worked. He sourced. He staged. He said words like texture and line, and meant them. I enjoyed funding a future where his eyes lit like a matched flame. Then Sienna Vale appeared, announced by a silk scarf in July and a handshake you could ice a drink with. Branding guru, interior alchemist. Also, Julian's ex-girlfriend. He introduced her carefully, like passing a glass blade. We dated years ago, he said, but she's the best at this. Sienna smiled like a verdict. Suddenly, Alon needed Sienna's everything. The logo was static, the brand voice stifled by caution. She spoke in buzzwords with the confidence of someone billing by the syllable. It wasn't just advice, it was invoices. I monitor money the way some people monitor their heart rate. I saw the anomalies first as whispers. A $1,250 charge at the Ember Hotel tagged Strategy Retreat. A client dinner at Lerpent for $312 on a Monday when the store wasn't open. Consulting fee, BV, $5,000. A week later, another $5,000. A new laptop, $2,100, office hardware. Luggage, $800, inventory transport. The ledger stopped sounding like growth and started sounding like someone else's pulse. Julian breezed in late, smelling like champagne and a story he hadn't rehearsed. He kissed air near my cheek. Babe. Julian, we need to talk. He reached for charm, a reflex, not a decision. If this is about the printer being behind on invitations, it's about the account. I turned my laptop so he could see the line items. You've paid Sienna $10,000 in 2 weeks. And what was the Ember Hotel retreat? He flicked his eyes over the screen, the way a person glances at a weather app and decides the rain won't apply to them. Networking. You have to spend money to make money. Sienna has connections, he said, hearing me nod at all. This is how brands are born. I get brands, I said evenly. And I get spreadsheets. This spreadsheet says you're bleeding my investment on dinners and spas. What's really going on with you and Sienna? His face arranged itself into injury, hurt as theater. Eliza, don't do that. You take everything so seriously. It's just a project. It's just money. The room changed temperature. Just a project, I repeated. My $80,000 is just a project? He lifted his hands, surrendering to a god named Vibes. You analyze everything to death. Love, too. He laughed then, a soft little scoff that didn't reach his eyes. It wasn't we are in a fight laughter. It was you don't matter laughter. It went through me like a ruler's edge. Something in me clicked. Not rage, not even grief. A switch. I watched the air around him, the way heat shimmers over a road, the choreography of my life, the dishwasher, the thermostat, the green cell in my budget, lined up in my peripheral vision. If this was just a project, then we could treat it like one. Projects have scopes. Projects are dissolved. I closed the laptop. You're right. He blinked, disoriented by agreement. I should stop taking it so seriously. He smiled, relieved. Exactly. I smiled back, the polite kind you use at a neighbor you don't know. The first move of a waltz only I could hear. That night I emailed Alana. Subject, dissolution. She answered at 7:06 a.m., brisk as caffeine. This is why we draft ironclad operating agreements. You own 80%. You're the sole signatory on the lease. You can dissolve, absorb losses, and liquidate. We'll need to deal with the lease, penalty likely, but better than funding a sinkhole for 2 years. There are moments in life where you realize you've been standing on a trapdoor the whole time, except tonight, I'm the one with the lever. The calm that came wasn't triumph. It was the silence of a room after a machine stops. You notice how loud it had been only when it isn't anymore. Julian came home near midnight, glowing from an evening he couldn't afford. "Babe, we secured a micro-influencer for the grand opening, Sienna says." "The bank called," I lied pleasantly. "Security flag. Probably nothing." He didn't hear me. He was practicing gratitude for an audience. "This is going to be huge, Eliza. You'll see. Everyone will see." "I already do." When he went to shower, he left his phone on the counter. A preview flashed. "Sienna, the tinfoil silver for you, the velvet teal sofa for the lounge. Trust me." Another bubble appeared. "He'll pay. He always does." I'm not a jealous person. Jealousy is a loud, messy reaction. What I felt was quieter, precise. A series of next steps collapsing into place like a ladder you kick free when you reach a ledge. At 8:01 the next morning, I walked into the bank with my ID and the LLC documents. "I'm the managing member," I said to the woman with a nameplate that said Doris. "I need the account frozen." "Closed?" she asked. "Frozen," I said, and watched a cursor blink. "Block all transactions, including the debit card." Outside, the winter air tasted like coins. My phone vibrated exactly 4 hours later. "Eliza." Julian didn't say hello. "My card was declined at the printer. Grand opening invitations. What did you do?" "Weird," I said. "Must be a security flag. The bank's probably being overly cautious." "Eliza," he hissed, trying on authority that didn't fit. "Fix it." "I'm buried in a project at work. You know how I am, always taking things so seriously." Silence. Then, "Sienna is waiting on her payment. This is humiliating. You might have to cover it for now." "With what? You know I don't. That's what the business is for." I said, as if considering the weather. "You're breaking up. We'll talk later." I hung up and, for the first time in weeks, exhaled all the way to empty. Step 2 would be the lease. Step 3, the assets. Step 4, my exit. I could see it as clearly as a flowchart, boxes and arrows marching to an outcome. Across the room, my dishwasher ticked into its cycle, right on time. The sound landed like a promise. "There's a grand opening in 3 weeks. Julian has been posting a countdown. Soft focus teasers, somebody's borrowed Tesla, captions about alchemy, and the city's new ritual. He doesn't drive by the storefront. If he did, he might notice how easy a space looks to empty once you know what everything cost." The last thing I did that night was take a long shower with the lights off, just the city's sodium glow banding the tile. I remembered his laugh and filed it like a document. Exhibit A, motive. People think strategy is cold. They mistake temperature for mercy. What I know is this: there's a right way to end something that's bleeding you. Quietly, cleanly, without spectacle. But sometimes spectacle arrives anyway. I lay in bed and listened to my own heartbeat, calm as the green cell in a spreadsheet. "It's just a project," he'd said. "Fine, let's finish it like one." When you start dismantling a life, it's best to treat it like an audit. Not vengeance, just arithmetic. Alana handled the filings. "You're the managing member, Eliza," she reminded me over speakerphone. "Everything you're doing is within your rights. But keep records, dates, emails, screenshots. If he gets dramatic, you'll need receipts." Dramatic was Julian's native tongue. I was fluent in silence. The commercial property manager, a man named Carlson, had the kind of gravel voice that made even sympathy sound like billing. "You're pulling out of the lease?" he asked. "I'm dissolving the LLC. I need to terminate." "That's a 2-year note." "I know. What's the penalty?" He sighed, calculating. 3 months' rent. 15,000. I didn't flinch. "Cut me the termination papers. It'll be empty by Friday." He stared for a beat longer than necessary. "She run it into the ground already?" "She ran it," I said, past tense. That night, I packed what was mine from the apartment. Not much. My dishes, my laptop, the framed spreadsheet art that Julian called proof of neurosis. I left his things untouched. Let him come home to an echo. The next morning, I hired a consignment broker. His name was Dale. He wore paint-spattered jeans and understood the smell of endings. "You want liquidation value?" he asked. "I want it gone." He nodded, did a slow walk through the boutique. Every corner still carried Julian's fingerprints. Candles with names like Ambition and Sienna. Velvet curtains she'd insisted on. Racks of couture that had never met a customer. "I'll give you 60 cents on the dollar," Dale said. "Done." By noon the next day, Alan was a concrete box again. The gleaming sign still hung in the window, mocking the emptiness behind it. I stood in the middle of the floor, surrounded by the hollow echo of money turned back into air. The hum of the overhead light made a nervous sound, like something that hadn't realized yet it was out of a job. I wasn't sad. I thought I might be, but what I felt was clarity. The kind you only get after deletion. Julian was still posting online. 3 days until something beautiful. "Can't wait to share what we've built." He used "we" the way people use fairy dust. Sienna commented under each post with fire emojis and the phrase "brand rebirth." I didn't block them. I watched. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again. An unknown number. "Eliza, it's Julian's mom, Lorraine." Her tone was the practiced kindness of someone who thinks money is a mood. "Julian's frantic. The store account's frozen. He says you're making a huge mistake." "Lorraine," I said evenly, "there's no account anymore. The LLC's dissolved. You can't just do that. That's his dream. And my 80,000. You're so cold about it. You can't put a price on creativity." "I did," I said. 80,000. It depreciated beautifully." She gasped. "You promised to help him. He's the visionary." I smiled, invisible. Vision without math is hallucination. That evening, Alana sent me the finalized dissolution papers. "Everything squared. Lease terminations effective next week," she paused. "You okay?" "I'm organized," I said. "That's not what I asked." "It's close enough." I moved into a corporate hotel. Sterile sheets, perfect Wi-Fi, no ghosts. My reflection in the chrome fixtures looked like someone mid-metamorphosis, half analyst, half absence. On Julian's feed, the countdown kept ticking. 5 days. 4, 3. He'd found some way to pay for invitations, likely borrowed from Sienna or his parents, maybe both. The posts grew glossier, champagne flutes, candlelight, the kind of optimism that needs denial to breathe. I printed every one and paper-clipped them into a folder labeled Outcome Forecast. On the morning of the grand opening, I woke before sunrise. My phone was clean. No notifications, no missed calls. I brewed coffee, logged into my budget sheet, and balanced the final numbers. Out. $80,000 capital. $15,000 lease penalties recovered. $48,000 liquidation proceeds. Net loss $47,000. I stared at the red cell and felt peace. Loss quantified is grief contained. At noon, Alana texted, "You sure you're going to watch this?" "I'm an analyst," I replied. "I need data." By 6:30 p.m., I was seated at a wine bar across the street from the boutique. A glass of Cabernet, a notebook. The storefront gleamed under streetlights. Emptied, locked, for lease sign taped dead center. Across the way, caterers arrived, with a van of white linen and confusion. They double-checked the address, frowned, made phone calls. The light in the window buzzed like an anxious witness. 7:12 p.m. The Tesla pulled up. Julian stepped out first, tanned, dressed like borrowed luxury. Sienna followed, sequined and smug, her perfume crossing traffic. They walked arm in arm toward the door. I raised my glass. "Showtime," I whispered. Julian tried the key. It didn't turn. He tried again, harder, then again. His jaw clenched. Sienna frowned. Maybe they changed the lock. He cupped his hands against the glass, peering inside. Even from across the street, I saw the moment it hit him. His posture collapsed. He was looking at nothing, at the concrete, the broom I'd left in the corner, the vacuum of consequence. He stepped back, shaking his head. Sienna was already reaching for her phone. "What is this?" she snapped. "Where's the counter? Where's the—" I wrote the time in my notebook. 7:15 p.m. Impact. Guests began arriving. Black tie couples stepping out of cars, scanning the scene. Confusion spread like perfume. Julian's phone rang. He answered, panicked. Even without hearing, I could tell it was Lorraine. He gestured wildly, words spilling into the night. Sienna shouted at the caterers. Someone took photos. Across the street, I sipped my wine and wrote one more note. Observation. Illusion collapse. Public. At 7:20, my own phone vibrated. Unknown number again. Eliza? It was Julian. His voice trembled between fury and pleading. What happened? Where's everything? Did we get robbed? I let a small pause bloom. That project, I said. I decided not to take it so seriously anymore. Eliza, you can't. People are here. The press. You were right, Julian. It's just a project. It's just money. He went silent. Then Sienna's voice barked faintly through the line. What did she say? What did she do? You said she'd pay. You said she'd pay. A perfect sentence, heavy with proof. I smiled. You should thank Sienna. She taught me branding. Eliza, enjoy the evening. I hung up. Through the window, I watched him throw the useless key against the glass. The sound was small but satisfying. Guests were leaving now, confused, embarrassed. Sienna's sequins caught the streetlight as she screamed at him. He raised his hands, helpless. Someone filmed. I closed my notebook, finished my wine, and left cash on the table. Behind me, Ellen stood dark, hollow, and truer than it had ever been. Tomorrow, the real cleanup would begin. By morning, the gossip had already reached the parts of the city that cared about schadenfreude more than art. Boutique Allen Grand, opening. Cancelled last minute. Guests left confused. The article was 2 paragraphs of polite cruelty, no mention of Julian or Sienna, just organizational mismanagement. Still, everyone knew. Julian didn't call again that day, but his mother did. Eliza, Lorraine began, her tone trembling with moral outrage and self-importance. What on earth have you done? Julian is devastated. He says you stripped the store bare. I dissolved a business that was hemorrhaging money, I said calmly. I can send you the ledger if you'd like. You can't treat people like spreadsheets, she snapped. I treated an LLC like an LLC. He loved you, Eliza. You were supposed to support his dream. He loved my capital, I corrected softly. That's such a cold thing to say. Only because it's true. She inhaled sharply, the sound of someone who'd run out of the kind of power she understood. You've embarrassed him publicly. Do you realize what that means for his reputation? Reputation is branding, Lorraine. Sienna would know. Click. The calls didn't stop. Numbers I didn't recognize. Blocked. Another. Blocked again. Eventually, silence found me, the kind that feels earned. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived at my hotel. From Vanguard Strategies, Atienne, Sienna Vale. Subject, outstanding invoice, brand strategy, and emotional labor. Line items. Brand realignment, $15,000. Synergistic vision casting, $5,000. Emotional labor and creative support, $5,000. Total, $25,000. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee on the envelope. Sienna was invoicing me for emotional labor. I forwarded the letter to Alana with a single sentence. Please handle. Her reply arrived 20 minutes later. Oh, I will. The following day, she sent me a carbon copy of her response, addressed not to Sienna, but to the district attorney's office. Attached were the signed LLC operating agreement showing my 80% stake, the bank statements listing every transfer to Sienna, the hotel bills, restaurant charges, and consulting fees. A brief note querying potential criminal fraud and conspiracy to defraud an investor. Sienna's website went offline within the hour. Julian finally texted 2 nights later. Julian, you've destroyed everything. I hope you're proud. Me. Pride's inefficient. Julian, do you think this makes you better than me? Me. No, it makes me solvent. He didn't reply. The next morning, I found his face tagged in a story. Him, sitting alone at a cafe, captioned, "Sometimes you give too much." The irony was almost poetic. A week passed before the next escalation. A lawyer's letter, thick and indignant. Claim, breach of contract, theft of intellectual property, misappropriation of the Alon name, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Damages sought, $150,000. I emailed Alana. Do you want me to frame it or shred it? Neither, she replied. I'll send them a box. The box went out the next day. Signature required. Inside, neatly arranged. The LLC operating agreement. Clause on dissolution highlighted. Full bank statements documenting Julian and Sienna's misuse of funds. The lease termination with Carlson's signature and my $15,000 check stub. The consignment receipts from Dale's liquidation, proving fair market sale. It was less a legal rebuttal and more a eulogy. 3 days later, Alana forwarded me an email from Julian's lawyer. My client has misrepresented material facts. I am withdrawing effective immediately. The city moved on. The postmortem of Alon became just another cautionary LinkedIn anecdote about financial misalignment between vision and execution. Julian deleted his social accounts. Sienna disappeared from the branding circuit. Word was, she'd left town after some misunderstanding. Lorraine left one last voicemail. "He's broken, Eliza. You ruined him. I hope you can live with that." I listened twice, then deleted it. A month later, I moved into a smaller apartment. 1 bedroom, west light, a dishwasher that waited for off-peak because I taught it patience. The silence felt different here, lighter, earned. I unpacked a single framed print, a photo of Alon's empty floor, taken the day I sold everything. The broom leaned in the corner like punctuation. I pinned the dissolution certificate next to it. It wasn't a trophy, it was proof of closure. That night, I poured a beer and opened my budget spreadsheet. A new column blinked, waiting for entries. Losses, 45,000. Lessons, priceless, if you like cliches. I smiled despite myself. People say analysts don't feel deeply, that we hide behind numbers. Maybe, but numbers have a kind of mercy. They tell the truth without apology. Julian once said I took everything too seriously. He was right. Seriousness kept me solvent, sane, and free. Now, when the dishwasher hums and the thermostat sighs, I let myself laugh. Not loud, just enough to mark the end of a project well executed. Because that's what it was, just a project, and it's done.